Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Eccentric Mind Podcast with George Hernandez. I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. I'm going to get straight into the topic because it's relatively fresh in my mind and I don't have anything scripted for today. Aside from like the little half an hour to 45-minute writing session that I had just now, this idea comes from a lot of experience that I've had in my life. And it comes from this point of like depression that you have, and when you're really down in the dumps, when you're actually like at rock bottom, when your car's folded, you have no money, you lose your job, your business goes out of whatever, right? Like rock bottom. I've been at rock bottom a few times, and each time I've been in it, I've learned something new. But I've also been able to catapult myself in a way towards like meaningful fucking action, right? And I want to talk about what I've been seeing recently, and it's pretty interesting. Like a lot of the thoughts that I've been having, reflecting on my times of rock bottom. And what I've been seeing a lot recently is the fact that what I've been thinking of is that life is just this point where you're constantly running and you're in motion, and the more you're in motion, you eventually have to take leaps, right? So it can be anywhere, like starting a new job, making a change, meeting new relationships, deciding to do boxing, deciding to switch something in your life and take some sort of meaningful change towards, transcendence, right? We want to transcend and we want to be better, right? So we're constantly taking these leaps, or you take big leaps like quit your job or start a business or invest all of your money, right? We take those big leaps, or we just take smaller leaps. But life is just this continuancy of these leaps that you're taking while in motion. Sometimes you can fucking make the leap, right? You can start at one edge and then take the leap and reach the other side of the edge, no problem, and continue motion, right? You continue moving, you're fine. But sometimes, man, those leaps, you don't always make it to the other side. And what I'm realizing now is that those leaps that you take where you fall, and you kind of fall, what I like to call it is like that deep, dark abyss in the middle. You don't fall to your demise. You don't stay there. You don't die, right? You may fail and you may fall down. But what I like to see it, and the way I've been envisioning it recently, is that abyss that you fall into isn't the end. It can't be the end, right? What I like to see it as, the abyss is spring-loaded. So when you fall down into the abyss, you have some sort of leverage that you fall onto, okay? So now here's where I'm going to read a little bit of my pages just to kind of get a glimpse of. So the way I see it is, like I said, this abyss, this deep, dark abyss that you fall into is spring-loaded. So as you understand what a spring is, you understand that the more the spring goes down, once it's let go of, it catapults, right? It shoots straight up into the air. The way I like to think of it is the deep, dark abyss that you go into, you essentially have to embrace the period that you're in. Because understand this, you took a leap, right? Whether it was small or it was big and you failed at it, you took a leap, and you need to embrace that for what it is, right? You actually decided to make some sort of change and you took an attempt at it. 99% of the people don't make an attempt. So for one, you need to be proud of yourself for actually trying to make some sort of meaningful change, and understand that you will eventually get onto the top of the platter where you can then be able to move in motion and in motion. But I mean, fails happen, right? We all fucking fail. We all lose. We all feel low. But the whole point of the spring is that you need to literally embrace this period of time, this period of struggle, this period of pain, because it sucks, guys. It sucks trying to build a business and then the business fails. It sucks having to go to the gym and then losing your progress because you have struggles of overeating and binging. It sucks being alone and isolated when you know you have so much to give, but are too afraid to go out and find and discover new relationships. That shit sucks. But then what's worse is actually trying it out and failing and not being able to reach that point that you want to reach, right? So I understand that. That shit is painful. And it's not always fun, right? I think I'm guilty of it myself, where I think part of me does enjoy the pain a little bit, and it's always this like coal to the fire, like, okay, there's something like a chip on my shoulder kind of thing where I'm using this in order to get to where I want to get to. But sometimes that shit isn't enough, and it just like kind of makes you feel like no one understands or no one wants you. Anyways, I've been seeing a lot of the same signs that I did in the past when I fell down into this abyss. And like I was mentioning before, that it's spring-loaded, but one of the big things about it is when we're in motion, we likely feel good about ourselves, right? We're taking this plan. I'm moving towards this plan. I'm taking action. I'm seeing some progress. I'm seeing some results. And then you drop in a period where you didn't want to drop. You fall when you didn't think you were going to fall. And now you're constantly trying to get back up to that level playing field where you're constantly in motion again. The way I see it, I'm going to look at the camera now. So the way I see it is like there's a cliff, right? There's 2 hills, 2 ledges, and my face is the abyss, right? So most of the time we're up here. We're in this even playing field, running across, taking leaps. But then one day we take a leap that is too big, or it could be small, whatever it may be, that is outside of our expectation of what we thought could have and would have happened. We fall down into the abyss now. But since that drop is really low, when you're at the top of a spring, you don't have much leverage to drop down and then get back to that point. So oftentimes we're down here, but we think we can just slow a slight spring down and then get up to this point. But the more we do it, the more we see that we're incapable of reaching that point with the amount of leverage that we have going down. Like I said, it's a spring, so the more you drop, the more you'll be able to catapult up to where you want to get to. But most people, when we reach that point of like lowness, we don't realize that we need to drop down a little bit lower so that way we can spring upward. But most of the people just drop down an inch and try and get back and try and get back and try and get back and try and get back, right? Where when we do that, that's where we burn ourselves out a little bit more, right? Because we're fucking giving it our all. We're trying to be more consistent. We're trying to be more disciplined. We're waking up earlier. We're hitting the gym more. But then it's just not reaching that status that we were at before. We're not operating in that level that we were before. Now, the abyss, as I've learned, isn't as deep and dark and scary as I thought it was. So instead of seeing it as uncertainty, see it as a certain way to get yourself out. Okay? What I've learned is that those deep, dark moments that you have tend to be the most pivotal in your life. And a majority as to why I started this one as well is because I read a quote, and I'm going to see if I can summarize it the best to my capability. But honestly, I don't remember where I read the book from, or I don't remember where I read this quote from, but it's still really fun in my head. And in summary, it went something like this. So, fundamentally speaking, action is the only thing to do when you're in a rut, right? So what I mean by that is action is the fundamental answer to get yourself out of the position that you're in right now. Whether you're depressed, whether you're low on income, take more fucking action. Give more of your time. Do more, right? That is a fundamental understanding that most people have that knowledge within. Okay? So if you're struggling, take more action. If your content sucks, take more action. The absolute answer that you need for all your problems is less about ruminating about how miserable you are and how miserable your life is, and just begin taking action upon the things that are miserable in your life. Okay? So, because the more you are ruminating about how miserable you are in your life, the more harmful, vicious, and hostile your emotions are towards you, making that depression, that isolation, that hurt, that pain that you have within yourself 10 times stronger than you are. Okay? Yeah, the more you savor and stick to your problems, the more hostile they get towards you, and the depression becomes stronger. Right? So knowing that, the person who has an aptitude for inaction, he'll soon understand that something needs to change and he needs to be the captain of a ship. Action is the clear answer to all of your fucking problems. But a majority of people don't have that fundamental understanding in their head, in their mind, that they are the captain of their ship and they can literally change their lives if they decided to get off the couch. Now, the people who don't have that fundamental understanding, something needs to happen in order for them to flip that switch. Something needs to happen. Something needs to occur. They lose their job. Their light is off. Right? Like they can't pay rent. They can't pay their lights. Their kids are hungry. They need to have something happen to them. A problem, a scenario, an instance that is able to flip that fucking switch where they internalize and decide, how can I change where I'm fucking at right now? I hate where I'm at. And that's where rock bottom comes in. That's where you fall down into the spring-loaded abyss and you decide, I'm going to drop. I'm going to embrace this period of struggle, and I'm actually going to drop myself even more. Because once you drop, like I mentioned before, once you drop, you're trying to get yourself back up. You're trying to move back to that even playing field. But once you decide to embrace that you are down, once you decide to embrace that you're in a rut, and you decide to let it be, you then internalize it in a way where you decide to take action, or you decide not to take action as much as before. Because eventually, the more you drop, the more that spring is loading down, you're building yourself up in a manner that is not action oriented. So you're actually doing other things aside from taking action. You're like internalizing, you're understanding yourself a little bit more, but you're not moving. Okay? So that's you dropping down. Okay? You're talking about your feelings more, you're understanding yourself a little bit more. Maybe you're not doing as much as you would have beforehand, like you were when you were in motion, when you're in that even level playing field. Maybe you're not doing as much. Maybe your load is lightened, right? It's not as much as you're used to, right? So once you drop all the way down, once you're ready to catapult, that's when that shift happens. That's when you realize, like, holy fuck, man. That's when you have this distaste for the amount of inaction that you've been having recently. And you kind of, it's like this cold to the fire where you understand fundamentally that you're capable of doing so fucking much more than what you're doing. Because you were at this point, this even playing field where you were working, you were hustling, you were grinding, but then you had this rut that dropped you all the way to fucking rock bottom. And guess what? You're at the very bottom of the fucking spring, ready to catapult yourself up to the top. And it's the idea that, damn, I was up here and now I'm down here. It's like this shift, guys, where you allow yourself to be miserable. You allow yourself to be depressed. You ride out the fucking wave rather than resisting the emotions and the tension that you have within yourself. You stop resisting it and you decide to face it on, like face it on. You decide to face it on. You're not running from it. You're not neglecting it. You're not trying to distract yourself with all kinds of action that isn't taking you from point A to point Z. you're facing it face forward, not distracting yourself. You decide to face it. You're not running anymore. And because, like I was going with this quote, fundamentally speaking, action, doing anything, is best for when you're in a rut. When you're depressed, it's best to do literally anything else than sit around thinking about how miserable you are, right? So the more you savor and stick to your problems, the more hostile they get towards you. So knowing that, the person who has an aptitude for inaction, he'll soon understand that something needs to change and he needs to be the captain of his ship. You will be down at the very bottom of the spring, where finally, you may have been taking action before, but because you dropped all the way down to the spring and you let yourself deal with your issues, you let yourself deal with the depression, you let it pile on a little bit more. And then this distaste for yourself comes in. This inability to stay seated, this inability to stay where you're at and to stay doing the same thing over and over again. It's not until we hit rock bottom that his constant mishaps, failures, will leave a distaste in his mouth for his lack of action, and is the reason he can't change, get better, get healthier, get richer. But it's until you reach that point where you've been depressed, you drop down and you drop down and you drop down to this rock bottom point. You allow yourself to be depressed. You allow yourself to be distasteful. You allow yourself to have this lack of action. And you drop down so fucking low, this position that you've never been in before. And then you realize, well, it's dependent upon you to take the fucking action and catapult yourself again. But it's like there's this energy, and I'm having a little bit of a trouble being able to get it out. So there's this energy that you have where it's like you're just sick of it. You're fucking tired of where you're at. You're tired of the things that are not working. You're tired of feeling sorry for yourself. You're tired of it. Like you're tired of all the adversity, and you decide to spring yourself towards meaningful fucking action. So if you're in an evil playing field where you're actually taking action, and then you, for some reason, fall into a rut, allow yourself to go deeper into the rut. Allow yourself to go deeper in your depression. Hear me out, because eventually, the person who rots away in their depression eventually fundamentally understands that he needs to take action right away so that he can then change his life or change his current situation, right? And I wrote here, some people are in the abyss for months until it snaps. The relinquishment of the sorrow you faced, the adversity, the pain you went through, and you use it as this new coal to this everlasting fire you have stored up from all the energy you had from your prior inaction. And you catapult from rock bottom in the abyss to the next leap that you needed to embrace. And sit with. But it comes from letting yourself be depressed, facing it and embracing it, right? So for example, I'll talk about my scenario. There's this point where I fundamentally knew that I was going to do something. Like the direction I was headed towards, I knew I was going to do something. And it was like there was a version of myself within me that was constantly telling me, like, preaching just the amount of good work that I can do, the things that I was capable of doing, the experiences I was able to compound, just how great I was capable of being. But my actions didn't represent those thoughts. What I would actually do was I would sit there in my heartbrokenness. I would sit there and smoke weed. I would sit there and be unconfident. I would sit there and be anxious and not improve upon my skills and feel sorry for myself, drink alcohol, smoke weed, sleep late. Until I was so deep in rock bottom, I was so deep in this fucking abyss that I was sick of it. I was sick. I was sick of waking up at 2 p.m. and losing my entire day. I was sick of going up to girls and feeling so fucking anxious that I couldn't say a word to them. I was so sick of being disrespected and treated like a fucking mat. I was so sick of not being able to run 2 miles without fucking having to stop. Or looking in the mirror and seeing this just person that I just didn't like. I was fucking sick of it, guys. I was tired of it. And it wasn't until I dropped myself deep into fucking rock bottom that it sprung this inner deep fire within me that I was sick of it, and I was going to use all of the pain that I had endured, all the adversity that I dealt with, and I used it to my advantage so that way I can become the version of myself that I wanted to become. And now the patterns are facing themselves again. Everything is looking the same for me at the moment, where it seems like I'm getting all of these epiphanies about my specific life and understanding the metaphors that are coming within it. And it's all starting to look the same. So I've been kind of embracing that. But since I've grown and since I've really have made a change and like grown so much within the last 3 years since my last rock bottom, I can understand the lessons now, and I'm using that to my advantage. But being in rock bottom, it kind of shows you like, let it ride out. And then if you're not used to sitting home on a Saturday evening at 8 p.m. watching a movie, if you're not used to that, that's going to fuck with you. But let it fuck with you. Because one day you're going to be sitting down on a Saturday night at 8 p.m. watching a movie and thinking, God, I could have been great. God, I could have been doing this. Fuck, man, you could have been good. Fuck, what are we doing? Once those thoughts come in, that's when you know meaningful action is on the fucking verge. And then you can ride out that energy that you have. It's like this literal coal to a fire, and begin embracing the upcoming journey that you have for yourself. Because once I had those thoughts, I've always had those thoughts since I was like, I don't even remember, like fucking 8th grade. Once I had those thoughts, that's where within 7 months, I just changed everything. Every single aspect of my life, I became a new person. And it, like, my physique changed, my mind changed, my body changed, my spirit changed, my mentality changed, everything fucking changed. And it was like a literal transformation of my life, a transcendence of growth, where it was like that bamboo moment where, you know, you're evening out the level playing field. You're barely growing, and then one day, bamboo shoots up 60 feet into the fucking air, and you're a new fucking person. You've completely transcended your life and are on a new trajectory now. So, I wouldn't say this is the best advice, because, I mean, everyone varies, everyone has their specific scenarios, but if this is something relative to you, if this is something you resonate with, try out sitting with your depression. Try out, you know, not pushing yourself, right? Like, try out sitting with your uncomfort or your discomfort, sitting with it, embracing it for what it is. Like, my thing was, there was a point where I was working 16 jobs, or 16 jobs, impossible, where I was working 2 jobs, 16 hours a week, waking up at 2:45 a.m. so I could go to the gym at 4 a.m., then go to work right after the gym, and then go to work right after work, and then once I got home from my second job, I would work on my business, hitting the gym 6 times a week, meal prepping on Sundays, hitting 10K steps on a bulk, you know, fucking crazy, right? Like, I was at that level of production 7 days a week from Monday to Monday, 3 months straight, no miss days, okay? I did that shit. And that changed a lot in me. It showed me that I was capable of operating at such a high level. But not only that, operating in a happy level. I was fulfilled. I felt like I was pursuing my passion and pursuing my meaning and pursuing my purpose. Like, I was the most fulfilled and the most productive I ever fucking was, while bulking, while hitting the gym, while meal prepping, with no social life, right? Like, so it became this comfort for me to be productive. It became this comfort for me to, constantly grind and constantly move forward. And my discomfort, the thing that I was most uncomfortable with, was going out with friends, was sitting and resting, was, watching a fucking movie on a Sunday. It was, like, I felt like I needed to constantly be upgrading myself. Like, I felt like I needed to be constantly growing at a very unhealthy rate. So my discomfort was sitting down on a Saturday night rather than working on my business. My discomfort was watching a fucking movie. So sitting with your discomfort and allowing it to be what it is, but then eventually sitting with your discomfort enough will spring you towards the action that you want to begin taking. Because eventually, when you're operating at such a high level, such an extreme level where you're productive, you're purposeful, you're fulfilled, eventually it's not going to stay like that. It's really not going to stay like that. Eventually, you're going to drop down. You're going to fall into a rut. Now, 99% or most of the time, ruts can be fixed by sheer penetration. Just going straight through the wall or climbing yourself up to that fucking lever, right? Sometimes the answer is more fucking action. But there are deep falls, and you'll understand it intuitively that this is not something that I need to push myself through. This is actually something where I need to follow the pool and embrace it for what it is, and actually redecorate myself, rebuild myself up, so that way I can drop down, operate myself in a fundamental manner where I can move differently, I can speak differently, I can change what I don't like and change the things that don't belong to me. It's like, rather than thinking that you're getting rid of of who you are, you're actually getting rid of the person that you are, so that you can fill up the pieces of the person that you're going to be. So like, you're filling up you're getting rid of all the excess, and you're adding in new character traits or new armor, whatever it is, to the new person that you're going to become once you catapult yourself up to that level of motion. Yeah. So my best piece of advice is, if you think you're at rock bottom, sit with it and understand it. Have you seen those patterns before? And if you are at rock bottom, what can you learn from it? Define it. Define what rock bottom is to you. And if that's where you're at, it's likely that you're not going to be able to be disciplined or motivated enough to get yourself out of that. The only way you can actually spring meaningful, catapulting sort of action is when you fundamentally have those thoughts and desires that, fuck, you can do more. Fuck, I can be more. Fuck, I can do more, right? It's not when, I'm really motivated. Like, that doesn't change it. The thing that changes it is when you're fucking sick of the absolute inaction that you've had. And you decide, I am tired of the inaction, and I will do everything I can to get myself back to the lever of action. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. This one was fun. I think I'll do more off the dome type of podcasts. I actually miss doing these because there's just so much that I have in my head sometimes. Like, I'll think of these things at work and I'll like write it down. I'm like, holy shit. And I have so much to say relating the topic. Sometimes I do like the whole research aspect, and I like learning new things and talking about them, things that I like find enjoyable. But this just hits a different spot, guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic night. Thank you.